brought over like the plot plans and the elevations.
Start the Blackstone Regional District School Committee meeting for December 11th to the 14th. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Introduction of members.
Steve Tringali from Millville.
Brian Clark from Millville.
Jane Reggio, Millville.
Joseph Jarrett, Blackstone. Griffin Riley, Millville, student representative.
Eric Eisner, Blackstone, student representative.
Diane Robin, Blackstone.
Wendy Greenstein, Blackstone.
Erin Benalco, Millville.
Dave Thompson, assistant superintendent.
Alan Himmelberger, superintendent.
Bill Chapman, Blackstone. Our first public forum. Anyone like to come forward? Seeing nobody. Report with the student representative, Eric and Griffin.
We haven't convened in a little bit, so we have some Thanksgiving news to bring up. The annual BMR Powder Puff game, which is where the girls play football and the men on the football team are cheerleaders, was actually postponed from its original date on the half day before Thanksgiving break. It was actually postponed to the Monday afterwards. But regardless, the game went well. It was wonderful weather. It was very nice. The final score was actually a tie, 14-14, between the two teams, which are freshman, senior, and junior, sophomore. But the winning team gets points toward Pep Rally, a major school event. So we're actually going to have a tiebreaker at Pep Rally. That's a secret right now. It's being worked out by student council. That will surely be a treat for anyone in attendance.
Not a secret anymore.
It's not a secret.
Okay.
We're on campus.
what the tiebreaker is. And winter sports.
So, kind of to backtrack again to Thanksgiving, our football team had a Thanksgiving Day game. This was against Sutton in Sutton. I'm not sure the final score. I know they did lose, but it was pretty cool because they had a fan bus. We had a fan bus go out to Sutton, so there was a lot of spirit there. Then we had parent-teacher conferences, both at the elementary school and at the high school. I'm not sure about the middle school. But at the high school, NHS had a bake sale that was very successful. The junior class sold their Treasure Charm bracelets. That was also successful. And then last time we convened, we also reported on the Blacklight Dance. It was to be the following day, and that went very well. The juniors did very good on that financially. And then it was brought to our attention by a student named Sarah Douglas. She's the liaison, if you will, for a project called Project 351, and it's basically a food drive, and Walmart matches pound by pound what we get donated. So if I bring in a pound of goods, Walmart will donate another pound of goods to that. And then if we reach, I believe it's 900 pounds, they'll also donate $100 to the Blackstone Food Pantry, and all the food does go to the Blackstone Food Pantry to help well over 400 families in the area. And back to him.
As mentioned earlier, Pep Rally is coming up, and this is a major school event, arguably the biggest event of the year. So the way it works is on the last day, the half day before December break, all the grades convene in a large assembly in the gymnasium. The seniors run in through a banner, music plays, it's incredible. The basketball team shoots some hoops to get everyone excited, and then the competitions begin. So Pep Rally, which is actually led up with a Spirit Week, that's actually going to be extended this year because of the 2-day week after the original Spirit Week. But all the grades come in and competition begins. We have a spirit meter to mark how well the grades do, so it gets very exciting. The first event of actual competition is the dance, where every grade does a lip sync, and the theme this year is decades. So the senior class will be doing an 80s themed lip sync, the juniors will be doing a 60s themed lip sync, the sophomores will be doing a 90s themed lip sync, and lastly the freshmen with a 70s themed lip sync. The second mode of competition is the banner, which is actually done in advance. A bedsheet is painted for every grade and hung in their corner of the gymnasium to fit their theme, as mentioned earlier. And everyone's working really hard on it because this is no event that can be done in 1 or 2 days. With only about 2 weeks to actually do it. Kids will be staying after school almost every day, working hard on the dances, sketching out the banners. It's a big, crazy event, but it's so much fun. Other events at Pep Rally include we actually vote and pie a teacher in the face. That's always fun. The kids love that one. And then, of course, the winners are announced at the end. It's really a great way to kick off December break. In National Honor Society news, they're doing a hat and mittens drive. So also blankets will be collected. So any hats, mittens, blankets. The blankets can be used, but they need to be washed and be in good condition first. NHS will also be going on a field trip this coming Monday to kind of reward the students for all their hard work, because NHS is a very intensive society, lots of service, about 12 hours a quarter, lots of places to volunteer. So they'll actually be going on kind of a fun event to see a movie and kind of just bond over leadership, some discussions about it. It's a great way to really reward the kids. And lastly, the band update. Fall band ended, as we discussed before. Their nationals trip finished. They placed 9th overall, but with some captions doing even higher, such as a 2nd place finish for drums. And now that the winter's starting, the winter ensembles are convening. So jazz band has been starting. They've done a couple practices. Winter percussion too. Winter guard has started a couple practices. Woodwind and brass choirs have been practicing, and you'll see some of those at the concert in early January, and others will be performing throughout the fall and winter.
To add on that, winter sports also started up last week, practices and tryouts. I believe the girls' basketball game is tonight, their first one at home. I'm pretty sure the boys also had one. I know they've had a few scrimmages. They beat Bellingham 2 nights ago. In addition to that, indoor track has started. They've been inside and outside practicing. My hat's off to them. And also cheerleading has started.
Anything else from committee? Questions, comments? Brian?
Very comprehensive.
Nice job, guys.
Yeah, they still work on the tandem going back.
Yeah.
It's great. It's
Great present.
well, it's clearly busy. It's going to be busy. It's going to be June before you know it, so it's going to fly by. Great, thank you guys. Great, another good job. Thank you. I'm waiting for you to do the days. And like, these guys are juniors.
Well, then we have Spencer do it. You know that? The countdown for the seniors.
They haven't thrown that at me yet, so it's good. And just a live update, the girls are losing 3-2 to Uxbridge. That's right. They start games at 5 and 6:30 now, so it's a tough barn burner.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good holiday.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, moving on to school committee chair update. So I wanted to talk about the 9C cuts, specifically where it goes to our transportation, our increase in regional transportation. So the governor decided to cut $329 million. Part of that was the total increase for regional transportation, putting it back to FY 2014 levels. So the reason I bring that up is we would have to, I don't think we've taken another vote, but we voted to provide that increase to both towns. And obviously if the increase doesn't go through, then there will be no reduction of their assessments. We don't know what's going to happen with that. There's a lot of advocacy going on right now in terms of our Association of Regional Schools is really advocating that the governor really can't do this amount of a cut to regional transportation because they only cut 1.5% of the other line items, and it's literally almost, it's 100% of the increase of ours. So they're advocating for that. We don't really know what's going to happen when the new governor comes in January, but that's a big deal. So I want to be able to let the towns know that if there is no increase, there is no reduction in assessment, unfortunately. Any questions on that? I'm going to send you information on that. I'm going to get this stuff from Mass Association of Regional Schools, and they're doing a lot of the advocacy that's going on right now around that. Because it's clearly a big hit to everybody. They finally raised it to 90% reimbursement, and then it goes back to 60%. That's clearly a big deal. Questions on that? The survey, I just want to spend a couple minutes on, I think I sent everyone the budget survey, and then there's also the regional agreement survey. So do you want to talk for a couple minutes on how do you want to combine that? Do you want to do two separate surveys? What are people's thoughts on that?
On the survey, on the front page, can't you, if somebody's interested, I think it should all be one survey.
Okay.
Because if somebody's interested, they can click on I'm interested in the budget, and it takes you to the budget survey process. So they
So
can do budget.
on the website, have
Right.
the two surveys there? Because my question is, do we want to do one survey, combine the total, every question, okay, whatever it is. So if I have 8 questions for the budget and 8 questions for, we'll just merge them, 16 questions in 2 sections.
Yeah.
Or we can just have the 2 surveys on the website, and
And they
there's
can
2 links, and they
choose
can do both, or they can do,
Right.
you know, because I want to be able to do an article for the Enlightener
Right.
by Monday, so they know about it in
Right.
January, so people can do it that way.
I would think have them together,
Mhm.
but not all the questions together,
Okay.
because somebody might want to just be part
Yep.
of the regional, and somebody might
Yep.
want to do both. Or
I mean,
somebody might
it's
wanna-
all information, so.
My concern with having it all together, though, is they might click quick through the ones that they
Gotcha.
want, and
Yep,
then
me
not
too.
get a,
It'll be kind of
you know,
meaningless
might
days.
skew the
Yeah.
results a
Yeah.
little bit.
Okay.
But they're really different audiences. Like, we're looking for the entire towns for budget,
Mhm.
but not necessarily for the regional agreement. I know we are, but I think they're kind of different audiences.
I would worry that it would be viewed from someone that hasn't followed along as, you know, the budget's going to impact regional agreement
Yeah.
decisions.
It's easy to try
And
to
that's
tie those
not
together.
where we
It's
are.
apples and oranges, yeah.
So if you put both of them there together, you may get someone that says, they're doing this because,
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what would the suggestion be then?
I say 2 separate surveys, I mean, on the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But not linking them if someone wants to do both.
Okay. Any other feedback?
That's good.
No, it's a good point. That's a great point. So I think my goal is going to be, I think once it goes live, the link is on the website, I'll let everybody know here. We can spread the word via social media. The article will be in the Enlightener, and I'm wondering if we can do a Connect Ed something, email home to say, I think the word's going to get around. I just want to get the community stakeholders that are parents, you know, for them as well. So I think the Enlightener will take care of that. The issue is the surveys will be up there live for a month. And I'm okay with that. I don't know how other people feel about that, because I want to be able to let them come out in January, have that we can always look at the data as it
Right.
throughout the month, but then we would close it like the 15th of January or something like that. So it'll be up there for a month, which is
Well, we'll
okay.
have a close date on when.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
yeah. And it'll be in the article to go to the link. So that's I'm looking forward to that data. And then the other thing on here, as we enter budget season, I know Alan's going to talk about the FY16 budget a little bit. But as we enter the budget season, people have a preference on how we want to schedule those extra meetings. We can do them during this meeting, but we moved our public meeting up to the last week in February. So there's various ways we can do it. We can add meetings at night. We can do a Saturday morning, quick kind of workshop to talk to departments or whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. It's really up to the committee on what the preference would be. What are people's feelings on that?
I know for me, night's better.
Okay.
And the sooner we get down those dates would be great.
Do people prefer keeping it on Thursdays and just kind of going with that?
Yeah, maybe just play out.
In between hours?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Pretty much book all your Thursday nights one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think January is going to be busy because again, we're not going to even have the new governor's information until probably March. But we can't really go by that. We have to go by how we did it last year, and Alan will get into that a little later of what our needs are, and then go down that road. All right, so we'll plan on the Thursdays then. Okay. And then superintendent evaluation.
Has anyone done a superintendent evaluation on here?
We went for training on the new one.
For a long time ago. Yeah. I can remember the grid, but I can't, so.
It's been kind of lost the last couple of years.
Well, we had Perry last year.
We went for training, and it kind of fell apart.
Yeah. So what are people's preferences? Do we want to have Glenn Kuchar or Mike come in and do a quick training for us?
I think that would be good.
Okay,
Then
all
we're
right.
all on the same page.
Okay. The other thing is, so that I think I can arrange that. That'll be easy. It'll be another meeting, but we can wait till February prior to do that. What are people's thoughts on?
Is that okay with you?
How do you feel?
Get her home runs over there.
I work for the committee.
Hold on, So do people have a preference to time frame in terms of when we want to complete the survey? There's two frames of thought. There's the fiscal year, or we could go into August, September, and have accountability dates. It's really up to us when we want to do
What's
it.
the accountability data?
The MCAS, we'll have those, we'll have
Those
those.
preliminary, so those will be.
It's something, it's just, it's a piece of more information that we could go by. And it doesn't really matter to me when we do it. He came in August this year, so we could do something by this June if we wanted to. I just think if we could have MCAS data, it would be a nice added feature. It would just be up to the committee to say, okay, now we're gonna go for the next at least 2 years. We're gonna do the evaluation in August and September. Thoughts? You guys?
Do the evaluation in the August-September timeframe.
Yeah, right in there.
And you'd be playing off the previous year's scores, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be good for this year, and then part comes out sooner. So really, we're just looking at this year. So
Yeah, and we can switch it up year to year. It's fine with me. I just want to be able to get trained and then have enough information. I mean, this year, you tell me this year, it's really you getting in here and building trust and getting roofs completed and whatnot. But we need to evaluate your plan that you gave us. And does it make better sense to do it in August, September with some other data? I don't know.
Well, because that's on the plan.
Right, I know. That's why.
It would be hard not to have that data, because on the plan, that's what we're evaluating.
I think we would also have to say September, October, though. We don't have that in August, in our campus.
We could.
We could. Yeah. I think if there's a 90-day window where we're going to work on and complete this evaluation, it would be from August to October. August 15th to October 15th. I'm okay with that. But I want to know you guys.
I'm okay with that.
Anyway.
I think it gives us a full year. And it gives some chance to ramp and get things going.
How does that fit in with your setting of your goals for the year? What's the timeline for all that?
Well, the contract wraps around the fiscal. So July 1 through June 30th. Some districts, if they want to include accountability and student results, would go September 1 to August 30th. Some districts prefer to keep it when the board changes and reorgs, whether it's April or May. So there's all kinds of ways to look at it. For me, certainly the first year and the first several months has been a very challenging learning curve. So the later window certainly might fit best for the committee to have all the facts to evaluate, whether it's August 30th or September 30th as the end date. I mean, I'm fine with whatever the committee wants to do.
Okay. All right. So do we need a motion to do that, or you just want to kind of agree?
Let's go again. So where are we at? What are you saying then?
So I think where we're at is I'm suggesting that we complete Alan's evaluation within a window of 60 or 90 days from August 15th to October 15th, instead of having it done contract year, so July. That will give us some more accountability data in terms of MCAS and scores and so forth that's on his plan, versus just doing it in July. And I mean, for me, if we did it in July, we're going to be rushing through it.
Right.
And I really don't want to do that. It's the first one that we're doing as a group, and I think we should be able to have some time to get trained, look at it, and then put some measure in place.
Yeah, making a motion that we do that.
I think we.
Okay.
Second.
Motion seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, start saying aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions?
I'm going to abstain on that.
You can't abstain on
I
that.
can,
Okay.
because I actually want.
Why'd you get that?
You gonna
Just
vote?
for a minute, no.
Are you
I'm
gonna vote?
going to abstain, because yeah. I'm going to get more information.
Okay. All right.
Okay, very good.
All right, so we will do it during that time. That's all I had. I added school committee on here. If there's, I want to start kind of putting things on in terms of things that you want to see in the upcoming meetings, the 2 or 3 meetings out. So if there are things that you're interested in or getting as a committee to come here and get reports on, I just add this in here and we can open it up and if people want to throw things out there. As long as it's not 100 things, we'll have to kind of divvy it up.
Well, I know we had talked about at one point about having different kind of departments come in and share progress and thoughts and play, especially technology. So I'd like to see that. I'd also like to follow up on that athletic discussion in terms of fundraising, because we threw a lot of stuff out there, but we never really gave anybody an answer, and we kind of threw it back and didn't go anywhere. And I'd like to see maybe a start with.
Okay, that's great.
And kind of similar to that in the past, I know we've been sort of revolving door with ADs, but just numbers, you know, how many participated in the fall, how many in the winter, payments, where we are, all that kind of stuff. And that'll sort of lead into budget season.
Exactly.
What have we done, where are we going?
There we go.
Okay.
So it's not a surprise, but it'll.
Any other progress reporting that people want from?
Just an update on new things that are happening or just some things that are being tried at the schools, I think would be great to know, or maybe some things that are going well. I know we have PD at all different levels, and I'd like an update on how's it going, or, you know, what's the feeling, the vibe of the things that are in place in those PDs.
That's great.
And I'm thinking maybe the PD sort of outline for the year, and then how's, again, the budget, how does that dovetail into the
What
budget?
does that
Where
look
we're
like
going
in
with
the
that?
next, month?
What's the,
Spread out.
you know, I know we're halfway in now, but what have you done at the beginning of the year?
Yeah.
What have you done? Because that will sort
And how
of
is it all
frame what we're all doing.
Yeah.
Where are we headed?
And I know at one point it was kind of, the PD was kind of everywhere, and now we're kind of getting to a place where it's, you know, cohesive. So, you know, I'm just wondering how that's going, you know, across all levels.
Okay. All right. Maybe that could be an ongoing agenda item on here for.
I mean, even
for
just,
David.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. That's great. And I'm going to leave it on here. So if other things come up, we'll just kind of you throw it out here during the section, and we'll go.
And just to piggyback on what Jane said, technology, I know that's going to be a huge thing that needs to constantly be discussed because of Park. So,
Yeah.
you know, where are we? I know we just hired a new person, so what does he see?
Okay. And I think you'll talk about it. All right. All right, great, thank you. So now we move on to consent agenda A. We have, I'm looking for a motion, separate motion for warrants, and then a motion for field trips. Or do you want to do the whole thing? Let's do the whole thing. Let's just do the whole thing. Treasurer just gave you the link to go through the whole thing. All right, so looking for a motion for consent agenda A, warrants, minutes of meeting, November 13th.
So,
Motion made by Diane,
Second.
second by Jane. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The field trips, I know in the past, well, one of the things in our packet was an outline of the New York City trip that Mr. Cameron's working on. But just basically a heck of a lot more detail on this. Who's going? I know it says, the first one, on one of them, Old Sturbridge Village, grade 4. Which building? Both buildings?
It's in here,
But, okay, we have
the form.
yeah, but I was just thinking in general, I know we're talking about regionalization. How about if the field trips are joint? Would that be possible to do? That'd be one way to sort of draw your two buildings
I don't think they
together.
go to the same places.
Why not?
I think the fifth grade go to Science Museum, and this fifth grade went to the Art Museum. Yeah, I don't think they go to the same places.
I would say that would be a work in progress. I think it's a good thing to throw out there.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
It's a good, so you're looking for more detail beyond the folder on our
Well, I know one of the things we're concerned with is that there's a different experience in the two buildings.
Mhm.
And I think it gets lost when you don't have this. Obviously, the whole world is not field trips, but
No, I think it's
that's just one divergent thing we have.
It's a good
to pull together. And also, I know PTA is working real hard on field funding. Do they contribute to field trips?
They support field trips 100%.
I know they
So then you have each
do.
building.
So that needs to be publicized a little bit more. I think in here it's kind of hidden. We don't recognize what PTA is doing for us. And I think we should just kind of run through that every time we talk about field trips. Acknowledge what they do for us.
Which actually brings up a question, because if we approve a field trip, but the PTA can't afford to pay for it, what does that mean?
I would assume it doesn't happen, because we don't budget for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We do charge per student.
Yeah.
And we've done actually both. Last year, BMR funded the entire field trip. This year, students are paying the fee to attend, but BMR is providing the paying for the buses.
Historically, that's what the middle school has done as well. We do put aside scholarship money.
They're on the buses.
Okay, any other discussion? I mean, this all be great points.
Yeah.
Anyone have any specific questions on any of these? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Okay. Moving on to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaplain. Just a quick question to clarify on that. Did that include Mr. Cameron's request? New York City?
Too easy.
He's under you, he wasn't under our.
I guess he's on the travel, it's in the agenda.
It's not on.
Washington, it's all under you.
If you
Okay,
go to California, I want to go.
close. So,
You want to do his first?
yes, Mr. Cameron had discussed with me an opportunity that he has for some of his students, and since he's already here, he said, well, why don't I just let you know what's involved? So, a great opportunity, because we don't meet again until January 8th, probably, and some planning is involved. Mr. Cameron could then explain to the committee what's in his request.
And just a quick clarification on the agenda. It says 7th and 8th grade. It's the 7th grade class and the 8th grade course. I'm not bringing 300 students to New York City. Two-thirds of the vote. About 3 months ago, Mrs. Ryan and I put in an application. We did a recording of our 8th grade course. We put in an application for a program called Sing to New York City. It's an opportunity for our 8th grade course to sing on the 80th floor of the Empire State Building. So that application was actually finally sent back to me and accepted just a couple days ago. And I shared with the superintendent, and we're here because of that. In the last 5 years, we've found it important to add more to the 7th grade experience. Historically, 7th grade is when the middle school loses a few students. So that is the year that, the administration has really focused upon. We did bring in some school choice students this past year, but, what's important to me is if we continue the tradition, oxymoron, new tradition of the interest classroom in 6th grade, which is an overnight experience and has a cost to families, and the more expensive tradition of the Washington, D.C. trip in 8th grade is we look at some experiences with an S that are a little bit more friendly to the wall for 7th graders. But an opportunity like this, where we're going to send a group of students out to New York City, we thought that maybe the 7th graders could come along as well. There's a STEM lab, Sony Wonder STEM lab, that is free, so it's a free experience for the students. So we're just looking at a cost of about $60 per student. That would be the coach buses that would get all the students out to New York City. We're looking at May 22nd, which is a Friday. We're leaving probably very early in the morning and come back at about 9 or 10 at night.
Questions from the committee?
So in 6th grade, you have the nature field trip.
Correct,
And
which we moved to the spring because of the parents' survey.
So in 7th grade, it would be this trip, and then in 8th grade, it would be the DC trip.
Yeah, 7th grade, we look at a lot of day experiences. They have the overnight shut-in, which we did about a month ago. We have the 7th grade district celebration in the middle, where we get the 7th graders up to the high school to experience that. And then a capstone experience where they get to travel a little. So yeah, we're looking at potentially, if this goes well, this being a new tradition for the 7th grade class as well.
So what happens with the kids who don't go? I know, the 8th grade is just a new course, so the 8th graders who stay on a regular day at school. What about any 7th graders who can't participate?
Yep. I've already put a feeler out to the teachers. There are a few teachers, 7th grade teachers, who would have to stay back. So the focus of those teachers will be planning a day and experience for those students. Very different, and I know we've had a conversation, I've had a conversation with this committee about the days with an S that the 8th graders from DC, which is why we moved it to April vacation. And I'm happy to report, if you're interested, we have the most 8th graders who are registered to attend the Washington DC trip, even though we did move it to April vacation. We're at 133 right now. And my average in the last few years was about 110. It's also a cheaper price of that price.
Is that date cut off?
I'm sorry?
Do you expect more, or is that date cut off?
It's not cut off. I don't so much expect more because I've had an opportunity to check in with those families who did not register. And they just shared that, they had other plans or the trip might not be for their son or daughter.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. It says historical landmarks. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to plan this yet, other than maybe the STEM lab and the singing time, but 7 to 9 or 10 or whatever, seems like a long, is there a thought process? Are there teachers working on, Ellis Island, or, is there a project that will go along with this, or is it just a day and we're going up the top of the building?
Just like Washington DC, once this group, commits to it and approves it, then we will spend time to how to make it, an educational opportunity for the students. In 8th grade, we spend a lot of time. In fact, Jesse helps us out doing a lot of docent, 21st century docent projects, and they watch themselves on the DVDs of the coach buses. So a similar experience.
Okay, looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the New York City field trip.
Motion by Jane, second by Wendy, by Diane. Any other discussion? All in favor, so I say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Okay, unanimous. Great.
Thank you for that support. I might have heard Andy back here say the name because he's now in 8th grade and he missed this opportunity. I don't know how.
Well, you can join the choir. Better be on the choir.
Yeah, that's really quick in the course.
There you go.
There's a loophole to go.
Thank you very much to the committee for that. As we all experienced earlier this week, we had our first bout of nasty weather, and I wanted to clarify for everyone the procedures that I go through. This is one of the lesser known joys about being a superintendent, is that the state empowers us to fit in our 180 instructional days, and sometimes weather gets in the way. It is a decision that I make only in conjunction with public safety officials and DPW. And I know some folks think that superintendents are in decision-making together, but that's not fair to each individual town because topography, road construction, there's many variables that go into what makes roads safe and unsafe at the time that we roll buses. And between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., I'm talking with our Department of Public Works officials as well, and they're talking with police to determine the safety of the roads in our communities. And I will make the call between 5 and 5:30 in the morning, which will allow either a 2-hour delay or to call school for the day. And it is important to note that I only make that decision based upon the safety of the transportation on our community's roads. And that has to come from the folks that are out driving those roads. And sometimes it's several phone calls to determine if it should be a 2-hour delay. We had a very close call this week, as many communities chose to have a 2-hour delay. It really depends so much upon elevation and wind and so many weather factors that go into why one town is safe and another town is not. The one call that I do not like to make is to bring everybody in to school and then dismiss early. I feel that that is too disruptive and quite frankly doesn't really enhance instruction during the day when everyone's looking out the window. So I would usually defer on that, and I would rather call the day as a day off than bring folks in and then have to put everybody else on the road midday with all of the logistics that involves. So I will make the call. Once I decide whether it's a 2-hour delay or no school, then I notify the bus company, I notify the police, and then I notify several staff so that the information is then dialed on the one call so that everyone gets a phone call notification. It is then sent to all of our media outlets, and you'll see the scroll on the bottom on the TV, and we will put the information up on our website. So sometimes a 2-hour delay is all we need to get the roads safe for travel. And the one thing I don't like to do is call school off the night before. I know that some folks would prefer that we do that, but February 10th, 2010, a day that I will never forget, when the eastern 2/3 of Massachusetts called school the night before, and there was not a snowflake on the ground the next morning. But we had already collectively said we're all going in this together, and there was no school in the state from just west of Worcester eastward. So I will always make the call, with rare exception, in the morning between 5 and 5:30, based upon the information that I get from our public safety officials, who do a lot of work all night and sometimes several nights in a row to make that determination with me. But it's not anything that I consult with other districts. It's really what our roads allow us to do and to transport our students and our staff safely to our buildings. So we just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that. I did have some folks questioning my sanity, why we did not have a 2-hour delay, but upon follow-up with the bus company, drivers unanimously backed that decision. And so one thing I do want to stress is we all have to have a bit of personal responsibility. It is something that we teach our students and expect from our students. And it's winter in New England, you have to be prepared for walkways and driveways and sidewalks being very treacherous. And so that should be something that we all ascribe to this time of year. But I will always make those calls, either a 2-hour delay or no school, between 5 and 5:30. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody. I know that we can't please everybody. Some folks, depending upon the situation, want the day off or the 2-hour delay, and other people don't, for whatever they have going on. But I have to do what's right by law for our educational community. Next, I have a request for our student activities transfer. I have to pass this around, but I needed to read it. In accordance with the Mass General Laws, Chapter 71, Section 47, which is the law that governs our student activity finances, we hereby request reimbursement to be issued from the student activity account to the student activity checking account. We don't commingle, or we do separate the responsibilities here so that it's from one account to the other. We certify we have the receipts in one account that have been collected for these purposes and are being requested to be moved into the checking account. It's the amount of $20,000, $475.84, and it's simply a request to do that. We could have a vote to consent, but the the money is there, it's just a pass-through from one account to the other, which it gives us the appropriate audit trail for our student activities money.
Do you want to vote?
Just accept the vote of the consent of the committee to approve the transfer.
Okay, I make that motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Faulkner. Any other discussion? All those in favor, square saying aye. Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, the ever-present roof project update. Our roofs had a good test this week with all of the rain. We do have some more leaks that we are having the contractors address. However, the AFM and the JFK roof projects have been closed out, and we have signatures now to get the final audit from MSBA, and then we will have the exact dollars and cents accounting for that. The Millville Elementary roof project is now in the completion phase. There's a few more loose ends to be done around that project with some of our subcontractors, and it has been a bit frustrating to get them to move in lockstep. That's part of the vagaries of our final sub-bid process in the state, but that project is just about complete, and the next step then would be to commission and do all of the warranty work and submit that as well for final closeout. The high school project is complete as well, and the proper documentation for all of the asbestos abatement is now filed and complete in accordance with a myriad of rules and laws at the state and local level and federal level, and that project is done and moving to final closeout as well. So we will have these projects completed with warranties for the material as well as labor, and I think we are in very good shape now. In just another week or two, so we'll be done, and our buildings will be back to normal.
That means we'll be able to go around back in schools?
I would defer to our principal there, Mrs. Desai, but I believe that's the plan.
We're not going to go on the back just yet because they did the water test today. There was quite a few significant leaks. So my fear is there'll be trucks and equipment back there. I would not want anybody to face a truck head on. So I'm going to wait until the roof project addresses all those issues and make sure everything is safe.
And just to put people's minds at ease, in the past, before MSBA was the awarding authority and partnered with the towns and the communities, we had lots and lots of issues with no recourse. Now we have to have all of the projects, no matter what they are, tested. They are commissioned by a company appointed by MSBA as a watchdog, so that we do the infrared testing, we do the water testing to make sure that the projects then can be signed off on. In the past, we would have those issues without recourse. Now we have that recourse, so it's the right way to go. It does take a little bit more time, but it does ensure the communities get their money's worth. Next on the agenda, I have I got a call from Mr. Cameron Monday after Thanksgiving. I thought it might be for Patriots tickets, but it was not. It was to alert me that the alarm had gone off here in our media center at the middle school, and we had a small fire caused by an overheating heater aquarium. Unfortunately, even a small fire generates tremendous damage from water and smoke, so this is being cleaned up now and should be done by the 22nd, 23rd of December. So we'll have our media center back brand new, but it has been a process to reroute for the month of December. And our insurance has, through Maya, has stepped up and done all of the things that it's supposed to do. So the amount has been adjusted, the work is being completed, and then we'll be back in business.
Was that our third event?
Unbeknownst to me, it was the third event. We had two other issues in the previous.
The nursing area.
Yes.
Well, And what was the first one?
There was one in the administrative wing that a pipe had let go. So,
And will that affect, what's the ripple effect of having 3 events in a short period of time?
that's a very good question, and I think, I'm sure that I will hear from Maya. The beauty of belonging to the Interlocal Insurance Association is the risk is spread across 123 communities. So there may be an impact to the rate, but we also have ways to offset any increases through grants, through training, and other avenues. So we'll have to monitor it, absolutely. Haven't heard yet if there's any, will be any specific increases.
It's ironic that those 3 incidents happened at our newest school.
I'm sorry?
It's ironic that those 3 incidents happened at our newest school.
Exactly. Yeah. Next on the agenda, we were talking about technology a little bit ago, and we had a resignation of a longtime employee, Mr. Phil Tupin. And when Dave and Mr. Monroe went out to do the search, the pool was very shallow for talented educational technologists. Certainly a lot of folks who know the ins and outs of the actual hardware and software and specifics, but not how that translates into what we need to do, which is use technology to improve our delivery of education. We did find, I think, a very talented individual in Mr. Osiris Gonzalez, who comes to us from the Director of Technology at Newport, Rhode Island Public Schools. And he is, you will like him. He will be in, I'm sure, at your request to come and talk about the state of technology in our district. Obviously, we know we have some catch-up to do when you look at what other towns have in their buildings. So how do we plan for it? How do we pay for it? What do we need now? What can we need? What can we put off and get to later are all ongoing analysis that Osiris will be doing in conjunction with Brad Monroe and Joanne Arquetto and Sam Conklin. And Osiris will report to Dave as the director of the assistant superintendent for curriculum and technology and special projects. And but he will enjoy his personality and his talent. And so we look forward to bringing him to a committee meeting, maybe in conjunction with our budget discussions in January.
In his experience with P-word?
Park. Well, Rhode Island is also a park state. There's not many of us left from what it started out to be in the grand bargain. But there are a dozen states still who are park states, of which Rhode Island is, along with Washington, D.C. And Osiris has set up Newport to be park ready. So he knows what needs to be done for the requirements for park. It'll be interesting as an aside because the Board of Education changes and has a new chair. There'll be a couple of new people on that board, a new governor, a new president of the Mass Teachers Association. There's a lot of things in play as to will the Board of Ed hopefully approve park as the competency determination, which they're scheduled to do in September of 2015. But about half the districts are electing to use park in the next testing cycle, and about half are staying with MCAS. I think there is some nervousness around accountability, which is why some districts decided to stay with MCAS. There is some nervousness around how to translate all of the technology in the district to a seamless one-day testing cycle, and that's something that we will look forward to picking Mr. Gonzalez's brain to see if we can get there. So that is exciting. The preliminary FY16 budget update. In the perfect world, you would have had that this week. Everything documented. We're about 10 days behind, and the reasons for it is we We've had meetings with the leadership team, both as a group individually, to understand what the needs are of our individual buildings. We are going forward with the same configuration, irrespective of the discussion of the opening of the regional agreement. For next year, we're planning the same 5 schools that we had this year. And I think it's important, with a fresh pair of eyes, to look at the global picture and the longer view. And I know some folks say, well, we need a 3-year plan, we want a 5-year plan. We want to make sure that next year we present to you in the most articulate way the needs of the district. And as I said, we would probably have that right before Christmas, but I think it is good strategy. It makes good sense to meet those Thursdays in January. The goal, I think, along with making sure that the committee understands what we as educators need to provide our students with the very best opportunities, is to make sure that the towns understand the budget process really needs to be treated in a timely and thorough manner, so that we're not in the same position that we've been in, which is to reduce our liability and exposure to layoff and non-renew, and to reduce in force at the end of the year, and then spend a large majority of the summer going back and trying to post and hire and interview folks to then bring them on board for 1 more year. It does not give us a chance for consistency of effort. It doesn't give us a chance to expand the loyalty between employee and employer. It does not give us a chance to really train and offer the professional development that everybody needs to become better at their professional practice. And so that piece, along with giving the committee the needs that we need and attach a realistic dollar figure, is also to work with the town finance committees and boards of selectmen to really get them to understand that we have, that we're in this with a plan to improve for everybody. And I think that's when everybody wins. The communities win, the parents win, the students win when we do that. Having said that, while we may have lots of areas that we want to add, we still are cognizant of the fact that the towns have a limit. And so we have to be aware that not everything can be projected and paid for in the very first year. But we have very real needs that will have to be prioritized so that we get to them in the proper sequence and that the funding will be available. We know that we are in a bit of a catch-22. We are losing students. Our enrollment is decreasing. And when that happens, we also get Chapter 70 funding that is reduced, because that is based on enrollment. And we are looking at technology for our students. We are looking at increasing the rigor by adding additional advanced placement courses. We are looking at lots of things to do that cost money to stabilize the enrollment and or to make BMR a choice destination for other districts. Because if you've ever walked through Franklin High School or Grafton High School or Uxbridge or Sutton or any of the other brand new high schools, we have a bit of work to do to make our facility functioning for the 21st century. And I think that's an important piece of our district improvement plan, and that is something that I think the communities will have to decide at what level do we want to project our facilities, our educational opportunities, and what do we want to stand for. And I think we will do that with a consistent message. I think we will do that in a fair and open forum with communication that is very clear and is provided with backup data and thoughtful analysis. It's the only way to tell the story that folks can at least then make their own determination. So Dr. Thompson, myself, the leadership team are putting the finishing touches on telling that story. And we should have that the week between Christmas and New Year, and we'll get that to the committee, and then we'll start having those discussions through January. As I say, it's probably a couple of weeks later than we'd like to be. I think that next year, when those budget numbers are lined, and I will be able to have a clearer, quicker grasp and understanding that we will be having those discussions probably kicking off at this meeting in December of 15. But we are, as I say, 10 days, 2 weeks behind where we would like to be. But that's the goal for next year.
So I know what we look forward to is, you know, we cut a lot of positions last year, and I'm interested in more of a plan, if we can recoup any of them, you know, particularly around, you know, I know the kindergarten aides was slashed last year. You know, there was there's the ever-present library position. So we're interested in looking at those and hearing from you and the leadership team around what the needs are, because we have to start there, because, you know,
that will kick off our analysis based upon what's important from what has been cut not only last year but in the prior years. It would be wonderful if we had a business manager in this district. I don't know if that's the most pressing need next year, but that is such a critical key position. We know we have to allot a significant amount of money for our NEASC accreditation visit next year. We know that we have a lot that we want to do with technology. We know that our special education costs are skyrocketing, and we're not the only district that's happening to. We have our early intervention students are presenting very complicated behaviors around social and emotional skills, and that is translating into more staff, more programs, even transportation. And so that is a cost that we're going to have to manage, but unlike other operations that have a chance to increase revenue, once our budgets are set, we don't really have much of an opportunity. And when students move in that are very high need, that then becomes an impact on the budget that triggers a series of decisions as to how to balance. So we have some significant challenges next year, but I would like to start, as the chair has mentioned, with an analysis of what has been cut over the last couple of years, and have things changed so that they're not as top a priority, or are they even more glaring? And that's a discussion I think that the school committee should have once we have all those documented.
The only thing I would add to that is that I can't remember the date, but I'll email it to the committee. The Funding Formula Commission is going to be meeting for an open forum in Central Mass. I think the beginning of January. I think it's a Saturday in January. I'm definitely going to go because they've been getting a lot of feedback around that, and that's not going to affect this next fiscal year, but it'll clearly, I hope, affect FY17. So that's not the total answer, but we need to really think about how we're going to, the next 2 years, and how we're going to kind of recoup some of those positions that we've lost, and be able to come up with a budget that's based on what the assessment for both towns, what's based on our need.
Yeah. The other last piece is that typically what's important is that first governor's budget, but this year, because it's an incoming change, the new governor has until March 4th to deliver his House 1 budget. That may be earlier because Governor Baker is an old administration and finance guy, so he might be able to carry that budget forward a little bit sooner. It will still go through the same 4 or 5 iterations into Senate, House Ways and Means, and back to the governor's desk. So,
Is he a friend of education?
since we're on camera, I would probably say that the jury's going to be out because he has appointed Jim Pizer to lead his educational transition, and Jim Pizer's a charter guy, and he also appointed another young lady with deep charter roots to his educational team. So I think that remains to be seen. Certainly the outgoing governor, for all of his ups and downs, I believe was a friend to Chapter 70, because in very difficult times, he protected that amount through thick and thin. There was an awful lot of thin sprinkled throughout that tenure. So, but this Chapter 70 charter, the review commission that Chairman Chaplin just referred to, is looking at the fact that if you take the formula and translate it from 1993 to 2014, it's an additional $2.5 billion short. So, you know, the cost of educating our students 21 and 22 years ago has certainly gone up. And it's gone up in the fixed costs, it's gone up in the salaries, it's gone up in the utilities, and it's gone up in special education costs. And so that has to be addressed if that formula is going to be the primary funding formula for financing public education in our Commonwealth. So it'll be an interesting few months coming up. Stay tuned.
Just real quick, when you had the principals put the budget together, is that a level service or level funding, or what? What kind of?
I asked everyone to tell me what they needed to run their programs and buildings for next year. I did not say it has to be a level funded budget or a level service budget or a needs-based budget. I said, tell me what you need to run your programs based upon enrollment, based upon, and then that's what then we pull together and give to you for discussion. Unless the committee wants to give us different direction, I think, at least for the first, excuse me, for the first budget that we are producing, I think it's imperative that we look at the total picture and see what the true need is. Because I don't know if, I think we have suffered as a district over the last 8 or 9 years and had many positions cut, and then it has been a very big challenge to recover some of those. So we're looking at it strictly from what is the need. Now, in some cases, this year's budget may suffice in certain areas, but I think, you know, just looking at what we want to try and recover in terms of staffing levels, there's obviously going to be some impact. But again, that Chapter 70 number, in order for them to make that fairer, they have to look at, they're never going to find the $2.5 billion to make that an up-to-date formula, but they can certainly look at how it's allocated between the towns and the communities. And I think that is an important piece of the review on Chapter 70, because Blackstone and Millville have certainly suffered over the years in how that formula is applied to our towns. So.
Any other questions?
I just have one. Based on building the budget per building, is the budget also going to be looked at in a vertical way too, so that if there's a need, you know, based on the middle school saying there's a need, is there going to be room for adjustment in terms of needs? Because I know in building, you know, I know there's a needs base by building, but also I think looking vertically, is there a needs base going that way too? And even Millville and Blackstone, you know, looking at it from all areas, you know, not just building.
Right. I think that is probably how we are going to start, and that's to look at everything individually. Mm-hmm. So we don't say, okay, leadership team, everybody work with 3%.
Right.
You know, nobody can hire staff. Mm-hmm. We know at the high school, DASC and our accreditation is going to suffer because we don't have a certified licensed media center specialist. And that's a position that especially with all of our hopes and dreams around technology, is a very critical position. We also know that special education may be able to reallocate staff. We also know that we cut kindergarten aides. We cut some positions last year that we would probably want to relook at to see where the balance could be achieved. But I think at least we're going to start with a blank canvas and not have any preconceived ideas slowing us down or holding us back, so that we don't say, you know what, we really do want this. How do we find it? How can we balance everything else to get that? So it's not a one-size-fits-all. The middle school, Justin might say, you know what, we're pretty good right now in terms of staffing, but I have a program I might need. And certainly the commonality that we try and strive for, so that, third grade in one building, elementary school, is consistent with the third grade teaching in another elementary school, is a huge discussion around the regional agreement. And, when I was in Oxford, we had that same situation. We had two elementary schools that were both neighborhood schools, K4 in both schools. And you can say, well, we have technology and video conferencing and all kinds of ways to communicate, but there's no substitute for having a cohort of grade level staff in the same building for consistency of delivering our education. So that is something that the communities will talk about. Certainly not for me to discuss. We are going forward next year with 3 elementary schools, a middle school and a high school. And we will offer a thorough analysis backed up with data and best practices. And then it's up to us to try and figure out how we get to build that so it's within reach for all taxpayers. And that's the key.
Anything else? No.
Just a couple more things before I lose my voice. The Unit C contract was negotiated through, I think it started last spring, and we brought it to fruition. I want to thank Mrs. Robin and Mr. Tringali for their help and guidance as we went through. This Unit C contract is a challenge because there's really 3 different units within that one umbrella unit, and it makes it more of a challenge to come up with a fair and negotiated settlement, collectively bargained. But the unit ratified it, and it was in your packet to look at. I think it's a fair contract. There are some very key deliverables that we were able to get that in the long term will stabilize our finances, certainly around compensatory. And there are minimal adjustments that brought it into the 21st century, certainly around the mileage reimbursement. But overall, I think it's a very fair contract for the district, as well as our employees. And I will look for ratification from the committee.
Okay. Any comments from Diane or Steve?
I just echo what you said. I think the biggest stumbling block was just how diverse the group was. Almost any issue that came up, the custodians saw this viewpoint, and the nurses this way, and secretaries this way, and the paraprofessionals a different way. So that was probably the biggest stumbling block, really. I think really was impressed with how well they're working together, considering that. And I think they had the kids' best interest in mind rather than their own pockets. So I'd like to sort of thank them for their viewpoint.
I definitely want to thank the unit members that sat on the negotiation committee. It was their time, and that's one of those thankless jobs. And they did it on their own. They volunteered for it. They put the effort in. They negotiated it in good faith, and hopefully, what was reached was the best for both sides.
Any other discussion? Okay, looking for a motion to...
You both have to
I have to abstain, yeah, but I'm looking for a motion. And, no, do you have to abstain? Yes. Oops.
No, it doesn't. Okay.
I'm going to live with you though.
She's on my side, so yeah, sure.
Okay. That's fine, so I'm abstaining no matter what.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Jane, seconded by Diane. Any other discussion? All those in favor, start by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Wendy, myself? Okay.
Very good. Thank you all very much. The one last thing, which was a bit of a curveball that I received at noontime today, was if you remember the Bi-County Collaborative, as all collaboratives in the state had to do, was come up with a new agreement that matched all of the new regulations. And the committee approved it, I believe, at the October meeting. Unfortunately, I just wanted to ask the committee to approve a new agreement that was done today. There's only about 4 words that have changed. One of the longtime member towns has withdrawn, Somerset, so they took Somerset out of the agreement. And then on section 4, page 3, under governance, several school committees wanted the language to mirror the state law. Not that school committees want to become delegates to the collaborative, but they want to insert the following. So it's the old agreement simply said each school committee executing this agreement shall annually appoint the superintendent of schools member to serve as the representative. They inserted to appoint the superintendent or school committee. So they added those 3 words in there. And the collaborative needs all of the member towns' committees to ratify essentially the same contract, just with those 2 minor changes. So I would ask the committee for an official ratification.
For they changed it to superintendent or school committee member, or you just said for the whole committee?
One person has to be appointed to be the member of the board of directors. The state law says it can be either the superintendent or the school committee. A member of the school committee. A member of the school committee.
Not the school committee.
Right, a member of the school committee. So they added superintendent or a school committee member.
So, that clarify?
Yeah.
So, I'm looking for a motion to reapprove the Vigo Collaborative bylaws with the additional information. Motion by Mr. Faulkner, seconded by Diane. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Unanimous.
Very good. And the last thing I wanted to say, since Christmas is 2 weeks away, is I wanted to wish the committee Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and all of our families and students at home a safe and happy holiday season. And unfortunately, we saw the tragedy that occurred in West Bridgewater yesterday. We have to be so careful. And I just want to urge everyone to make sure that they have a safe and peaceful holiday day. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Moving forward to report of the Assistant Superintendent and MCAS improvement plans.
Good, just in the nick of time. We got a little bit of technical difficulty. I have not talked to the Apple TV, but we brought in the second team back there to
Okay. Our iPads were flooding.
Yeah, we're fighting. There's one. All right. Real quick, I'm very proud to bring to you a synopsis of our MCAS improvement plan. This process began in the fall, meeting with the faculty at every single building, looking at our MCAS results, a deep, detailed examination of our MCAS scores, all grades, all subjects, looking for common themes and ways that we could, educate and bring kids forward so they can produce and come out on a higher end of these important assessments. The process involved looking for common themes and actions. I did ask people to look for, big ticket items, things that would make a major improvement, and I think you'll see a lot of that. Sitting down as a team, once those things were done in each building and putting together this presentation, there's a lot of common themes, and you'll see a lot of great initiatives and suggestions on how to improve our instruction and our outputs in the classroom. I want to praise the work of our staff, our teaching staff, especially our school leaders who are here with us this evening, our principals, in developing these improvement efforts. And at this point, I'd like to, we're going to start with the elementary school principals, so we'll ask Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Desai to come up. We'll present the elementary. Yeah, this is a one-year plan, so next year we will go back with the data starting in September. And we will be looking at preliminary data to design the plan for next year. So, welcome.
I think that Mrs. Desai and I would first like to thank all of our teachers who got together. It certainly was challenging to find time for teachers in all three buildings, at Complex and Millville, to get together. They've done a lot of emailing. They've met after school, provided staff meeting. So, you know, it was somewhat challenging, but they really rose to the occasion, and I'd like to thank all of them for the time and effort that they've spent on this. So I'll start. I will address the English Language Arts and CAS Improvement Plan. What we did was we took a look at all of the input from teachers, and we separated it out K through 2, 3 through 5. The reason being that at K through 2, we're really focusing on teaching students to read. And grades 3 through 5, we make that switch to reading for meaning. So when we take a look at that K through 2 piece, you know, first of all, it's important to meet all of those grade level benchmarks, but it's focusing on letter recognition, phonemic awareness, grade level sight words, how to take a word apart, decode it, and how to put the pieces together to build a word and code it. We started the Foundations program last year. So this is our second year for students in grades K through 2. And I'm really pleased to say that we have seen a difference. So we've had that consistency throughout those grade levels so that every student is getting that instruction. That's been really great to see. We continue with that instruction at those grade levels. The instruction is daily. We have the benchmark assessments for Foundations so that we can identify students early on, and that is absolutely key, because if we don't identify students early on, we're never going to get to these next levels. So when we take a look at students who are entering kindergarten, for example, we have students who already have some letter recognition. Some students can spell their names, some students know sight words, versus some students who come to us with no preschool experience, no letter recognition. So you can see, you know, right from the get-go, we have a wide range of learners in our kindergarten classrooms. So, you know, we really need to be focusing on that early intervention piece and identifying those students who need that support, because that all ties into successful learners. One of the things that I would like to highlight in the action plan is that increased homeschool communication. We've been speaking with our teachers, and we really need to do a better job working with parents and educating parents so that they understand the importance of reading, and also how to read with their students, with their children at home, and why we're teaching the skills that we are teaching. We know with our students, if our learning doesn't have a meaning, they're not as engaged and invested, and we need to do the same for parents. I think we all assume, well, you know, we go to school and we learn how to read, but our learners are just, they look differently than they used to. And we're expecting so much more from our students. So we need to do a better job with that community outreach piece. We also, you know, when we take a look at students who are struggling learners, well, what are our steps? What do we do? Again, the first piece is we need to identify who they are. We do that at the kindergarten level through Foundations. At grades 1 through 5, actually, we now have the literacy PD. We're using Fountas and Pinnell, which is a formative assessment, which means we don't wait until the teaching is done to assess. Formative assessments are something you can do at any point in time, and that is so very important to be able to identify very specific areas of need, so that when we look at that response to intervention piece, we can tailor those interventions to those needs and target that instruction. This year, when we worked on our schedule, we actually built in a response to intervention block, a 30-minute block daily. We also took steps to free up, if you will, our specialists, so it's sort of an all hands on deck. I think it's a good start. We have a lot more work to do, but I'm really pleased with the progress that we've made so far. We also are turning to our reading specialists in our buildings. They hold small groups of students to offer some of that additional support. We also have building-based support teams at both buildings where if teachers have students who are struggling, they have tried specific interventions, they bring them to the team. We talk about the students, we talk about other interventions that we can try. So all of that is part of our MCAS improvement plan. It starts very early on at that kindergarten level. So we're trying to do a better job of looking at those early warning indicators. What are they? And I would like to add, while it's not here, we really can't ignore the fact that we have to take a look at attendance. We have to take a look at discipline. We also have to take a look at the social, emotional needs of our students. Because we have to take a look at the whole student and what are the needs. So that all ties in with our plan as well. Also very happy to share that we are building our level book rooms. Two of our reading specialists just went to the Scholastic Book Fair today, so I'm excited to see what they're coming back with. But we know that there's a definite need. We're working very closely with our literacy consultants. I know at the complex and also at Millville, they've helped us to identify what we need. And we know that we need level books for, lower level books for students who are struggling. So we're building those, a lot more nonfiction. So we've identified the need and we are taking the steps to get students with the books that they need. The other piece is increasing reading stamina. It's about being able to pick up a book that they can read and get through the book and understand what it means to be a good reader. And we were talking earlier about, we walk into classrooms now and we're seeing really something amazing that we've never seen before. Students are sitting on the floor, they've read a selection, and they actually take over the discussion. The teacher sits back, there's a question, and students will, and it's all students. So it's not a teacher just calling on students who are volunteering. They have a sense of responsibility and a sense of confidence that I have not seen before. So we know that the more successful, more confident students feel, the more successful they are. Moving on to grades 3 and 5, we noticed that teachers were really focusing more on the open response writing. But again, we have to realize that reading and writing go hand in hand. The more a student reads, the better they are as a reader. They can apply structures of text that they're reading. They can apply it in their own writing. So, we're looking at, again, those specific areas, making inferences. We know that is a struggle, it's a challenge. Understanding why we're reading what we're reading, what does the author mean, what do you think is going to happen next? They have to get involved in that reading and internalize it. Comparing and contrasting. And the other piece that I've noticed walking into classrooms is When I walk into one classroom at a grade level, if they're making logical inferences, the other classrooms are at about the same place, which means that teachers then can meet and have discussions about that learning, so it's not disjointed. So we're working on our curriculum mapping, which also sort of is that's a part of our MCAS improvement plan, because teachers have to have the opportunities to have those discussions with their colleagues. So that's another area that we're working on. I spoke about the targeted instruction and practice, and that's a result of those formative assessments, so that we can group students who have the same need and offer that targeted instruction. We have been fortunate to have our literacy consultants. Again, this is the first year for teachers in grades 1 and 2, but in grades 3 through 5, this is the second year, and they have really been an incredible resource. Teachers have been emailing them, they're very responsive, so they're offering us a lot of support and a lot of guidance, so we use them. We use them as a great resource. So again, that RTI piece occurs in all grade levels, K through 5. And we do, again, look toward reading specialists, because that's their area of expertise. So, like I said, they're pulling small groups, they're going in, offering push-in services, being in the classroom during RTI. This is a very small part of our MCAS improvement plan for ELA. They are the highlights, but it's not just English language arts in isolation, because it spills over into all areas of the curriculum.
Which is interesting, because when you think of mathematics, to most people what comes in mind is a very small component of math, which is math fluency, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That is a very small portion. Having math fluency and being strong, having that foundation, makes it easier and more efficient for students to build upon their mathematical knowledge and have those critical thinking skills. When teachers are starting to now look online at the PARCC assessments, because we don't have it yet, we're toying with it, and the type of math questions is targeting and keying in on the critical thinking skills. So no longer will you have a question of typical word problem, that there's so many students who go to the mall, how many buses do you need, and you have to think of what to do with the rest leftover students. Now there's like different levels of it. And so it involves thinking of not only knowing the math facts, but knowing which strategies am I going to use to figure this out. And is there one correct answer? In some instances, there might be different ways to get at it. And so the teachers are now going back in the creative base, and we've been having a lot of discussions with groups of teachers and individuals of the frustration of math critical thinking is so difficult, because when we look at it from year to year to year, everyone agrees back, we need math fluency, yet that can't be a big component of what's happening in the classroom. And there comes that homeschool communication. A lot of staff have started using in the upper grades, and mostly 3, 4, and 5, iExcel, which is a software we use in school. It kicks out beautiful reports, so it can be used as a formula assessment. But the beauty of it is that students can do some of those targeted practice pieces at home. And based on what kicks out from iExcel, a teacher can guide parents who want to focus on this small aspect, so that a lot of that practice, because the fluency comes with practice, like anything else. We're talking about reading and building that stamina, you have to practice. And now we can use the classroom time, and the beauty is you walk into the classroom and I'm listening to students having conversations. I'm hearing teachers saying, okay, I want you to complete this work problem and show me 2 different strategies. Now they've had discussions of strategies, they've modeled, they've done think aloud, all those wonderful best practices, and now we're getting to the point where students will have a discussion of, well, I want to add to that strategy. And I think this is a good way of solving it, because that's where the critical thinking and those those connections come. So when we look at all of the areas that they've addressed, I mean, year in and year out, I think you could go to almost any elementary school, and they're going to pinpoint number sense is a weakness, math, fact fluency is a weakness, fractions, oh yes, fractions are big. Very huge concept. Place value, there was different ways, in fact, Mr. Duhan and I were talking earlier, of multiplication, there's an interesting way. We all probably learned, and we carry over with the numbers. There are, I think everyday math is to teach, you align it by place value as you're making the computations. Huge. So now students understand what exactly is place value. We keep teaching, and I'm seeing teachers going back to now more of the concrete learning with the manipulatives. And that's okay, because I don't think if you don't build that foundation with the manipulatives and the knowledge of what's the place value, what's the function of it, how is this going to help me with multiplication, what does it mean when I carry over, you will never progress to getting to that critical thinking for the higher level math that you go from middle school and high school. And word problems comes into play as well. And a lot of the focus what teachers are doing now is also looking at math vocabulary, not just obviously to identify keywords that will give you an idea, is this an addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Yet there are certain math words that have a different meaning from English language arts to math. And so, for instance, the word even means something very different when you read about an even surface versus what's an even number. And so the teachers actually have to teach the students that specific math vocabulary and words like integer. What is an integer? And you can see, and you walk into classrooms, the word walls are now including math words as well. So we're getting into that aspect of it. And I think the multi-step word problem is also learning how to draw out the answer of a problem, focusing on some real-world applications, because this is where we're heading now with the future. When you look at PARC, the whole point of PARCC is college and career readiness. And so we're starting at the elementary level with these healthy discussions. And writing, math writing. I'm hearing more and more teachers say, I'm telling the students to write out the answer, and when they start saying, well, this is math, I say, that's right, this is math, you're going to write. When you're talking about that type of communication, building that English language access and into math in some areas. We look at that into.
Questions? Elementary?
I have a question. We look at, the struggling students, and we look at them a lot. And I guess my question is, I know that the RTI blocks have been built in, but, based on our conversation about rigor, I always wonder what we're doing to reach that gap on the other end. And I guess that's my hope, is that, we look at that too. I know IXL, when you use IXL, the problems get more difficult as the child, improves. My question to that is, do we have that happening in the classrooms? Or do they use the iPads for that in the classroom? I'm not sure what we have available for those students who are, ahead of the game. Is there a place for them to be challenged and for that rigor to go up for them? And that's also in reading, and I know reading it's developing right now because we're going through the PD. But I'm always thinking of that other child. We're constantly talking about, how are we going to meet the needs of those students who are struggling, but there is, a huge portion of those students who need to be challenged before they hit that plateau and they're there. So, I look forward to seeing where that's headed, as well as, the great work that you're doing with the struggling readers and, the math students as well.
And that is a very important piece, because those children are working along, you need to hook them. And I'm seeing a lot of teachers now, with the RTI blocks, they are creating the more enrichment, the challenges. And a lot of students went down to the principal's office to show me a particular math problem where they've taken a computation way up because they've been challenged.
You seeing that across the grades or through a particular?
I'm seeing more in the upper upper grades, because I think the lower grades are still doing foundational skills, but I don't think it doesn't mean that the rigor isn't really challenging the upper grade students is happening, because I do see them having students take on the role of explaining out and showing the different strategies. I'm talking math. In ELA, I'm seeing throughout when I walk through the classes of having discussions of what's an inference and starting early. Even in kindergarten, I know they worked on today, for instance, they read a story and the point was, well, what would this character do for you in kindergarten? And so that is the rigor that I'm thinking you want to look for. It's not that it was just a separate group of students, but every kindergarten student had to discuss this one character and what is that character going to do for you in your life. And so it makes it personal, and then they were doing a writing task. And I thought for kindergarten in December, to make that kind of connection from the story and that character and how I'm going to apply it in my life has ratcheted up.
And how do they have access to IXL during the day? Only when they have computers?
Computer lab for the most part.
So once a week?
Well, depends on the teacher signs up for it. It's not that it's technology. When access from home, teachers sign up and take their students there too.
Do they know that?
But
the students know they should be doing it at home?
Well, the teachers are assigning, so I'm thinking because parents have to have access logs and things, so it depends on the teacher.
And then, of course, you run into the piece where if a child does not have the technology at home, that's a challenge as well. And the technology that's available to us throughout the day.
Right. I guess that was my question is, you know, IXL is a great program. I know I use it in the classroom. My son uses it at night. But, you know, for those students who want to challenge themselves, you know, as a teacher, you try to find, you know, something that they can do where it's increasing and, you know, you're not running to the copier trying to find all these things. This is a great program. So my question as a school committee member is, do we have this readily available for teachers in the classrooms? You know, I don't know that question, but that's why I was just kind of looking up. I'm like, do we have that available? I know we have iPad cards or iPad something.
We have a card.
Right.
But
you know, just those few in the room for those kids who need to have that, who need to bump it up, and who need to move forward. Why that RTI session is happening, you know, it's just a great tool to have in the classroom. And I guess that's, you know, I'm just trying to see both levels, and oftentimes we forget that level at the top, and those kids start to, you know, I don't want to go to school, or I'm bored, and we want to kind of keep them at a level where they need to be, you know, that's not overwhelming for a teacher or a school district, and IXL is a perfect program to keep them moving forward. So that was.
And that is a problem, because I don't know.
What is it that we just
And clearly, part of our thinking needs to be, we probably need more iPad cards. We probably need more technology over the next 4 to 5 years. And we need to get more of that versus, you know, hey, we can't do that. You know, the past couple of years, but no, we can't do that. I think it's a must.
Well, yeah, and I see it on the action plan, so when I see it on the action plan, I'm saying to myself, come September, how do we implement that? And did it work? So if it's not available, that's my concern, is because it's on the action plan, I want to see it in action. So I guess that was really a part of my.
That's a great point. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the secondary level, you know, first and foremost, I want to thank Dr. Thompson for the chance task in the middle. You know, and I think it was mentioned for budgetary reasons. You know, it's very important that we look vertical. You know, almost everything we do. You know, I had stock in the elementary school, I had stock in the high school, as does all the teachers in the state. The first focus of the middle school MCAS improvement plan, I think, does two things. First, it focuses on literacy at this level and has a building-wide, but I hope to a district-wide approach to just short answer questions or open response questions or short essay questions. I think it's important that the first one especially belongs on a literacy improvement plan as much as MCAS improvement plan. But to go back to, and get you to a very brief history of this open response questions area that needs to be addressed on our MCAS scores, but also for writing across all disciplines, is Dr. Thompson and I had a chance to work together and do 2 site visits of middle schools that, again, have literacy programs in place. And those literacy programs were very organic to developing an open response question, building block response. We did go to 2 sites. We went to Bridgewater and we went to Medway Middle School as well. Important for you to know is we had an opportunity to involve high school teachers and elementary school teachers as well. And again, I really wanted an opportunity to underscore that. Because when I presented this building-wide response for writing, the middle school teachers said to me, that's wonderful, but this response is also down at the elementary schools. So that when they arrive to the middle school, they would already be well versed, in how to answer, again, a short essay question, an open response question on any assessments. Try to get this back.
You can't be NHL, is right in the road.
Want me to try with
Okay, so again, with the support of Dr. Thompson, we took the 2 site visits. We also had what I think was the guru of Bridgewater Arena, an 8th grade ELA teacher came and visited during the PLC times here at the middle school to really train the teachers at the middle school, and we had elementary folks at the table as well, to how to teach students to authentically answer an open response question. And the approach is a simple one, and it's important that it is simple because the history of this school, and if I go back 5 years when I was assistant principal, we had a building-wide approach to open response questions, and it was RULER. It was an acronym of RULER, and every letter in RULER stood for something else. And it was too cumbersome. It was just too much for students to remember, when their chance to answer on a common assessment or a benchmark or again, MCAS. So again, we visited 2 middle schools. We had no idea that they were using the same approach. All we knew was that their scores are in really good places. But when we went to both middle schools, we saw the ASE approach, which is simply answer, support, and explain. So we had that opportunity, and again, I think the first area is as much a literacy area than it is an MCAS area. And what I like, again, with the support of the superintendent's office is this is going to be a, soon as much of a middle school initiative as it is a district initiative as well. If I could use the opportunity to say, the literacy programs at the elementary, absolutely the middle school teachers would need a chance to learn, what the 5th grade, 4th grade are coming up. Common language, the different ways in which we're promoting literacy skills. So that's in the open response questions. Our target, we're meeting again, is PLCs, professional learning communities. Our targets is just to really embed these practices in their DBMs, their common assessments, their benchmarks. There are still a few midterms that are coming up, especially in the 8th grade. So practices are going to be done. But what it's not is let's drop everything in practice sentence. Because again, this is a literacy approach that as 10 years as a 7th grade ELA teacher, I wish I had this approach. The approach comes from 6 streets away. The second area is we did 2 new hires. The middle school did 2 new hires from the Title I grant.
We have 2 para-educators, one in math and one in ELA, that were hired this past fall. We're so fortunate that both those hires are licensed teachers. They're highly qualified math and ELA teachers. The posting didn't call for that, but it just so happens that we found 2 worthy candidates who hold that license. One of them is a former math teacher in the building, which is Mrs. Gwen Swanson, who took a leave and then is now has returned for this position as well. This second area, and these Title I para-educators are a little bit more focused on, the Edwin analytics and those students who are at high risk. So this is our target of that population, whereas the first area focuses on all the students. And for those students who are seeking, high opportunity learning, opportunities, as Erin mentioned, that refinement of their writing in a simple way, the ASC, that's again all students. For the second one is targeting those at-risk students.
Questions, comments, middle school? I have to make one comment, because I have to be consistent. I think this is a good beginning, but I have to see something about science, in terms of what the improvement's going to be. I don't have to, but we need to see something in science in terms of, this is great. You mentioned a lot of stuff about ELA and a lot of this stuff will carry over into the test taking in science, but I think that's an area that just sticks out too much. I just think we need to have, as you continue to do this, and David, you did a great job explaining and helped me understand that last time we talked about this too, in terms of the three major tests there. So I want to see more of that in terms of as we go along. Not right now, but
right. And to everyone's, I did ask each level to keep two biggies. So the science teachers did do this as well. I can tell you flat out that open response in science is a huge issue as well. So, some of these are multi-subject areas. So,
and we have what I think is we've generated a lot of excitement and step in this building. We have another district coming in for a site visit, next week about what this school is doing in STEM. But that's not correlated.
Right.
And that's important for us to be transparent and take ownership of that.
I think, and to speak to your point, I think this has to be cross-curricular. I think these points are valid points, but science needs to be doing, there needs to be that connection with science and math. It all needs to be integrated in order for it to be successful. So, I think this is a good start.
Yeah, and just to, this is the snapshot, but I have a music plan sitting on my desk that talks about rhythm and fractions fitting into the math curriculum as well. So this is a snapshot. It's not all of it. We would be here for about 5 hours if we want to do all of it. So,
part of the site visit was special education teacher. A part of the guru from Bridgewater Arena, which would be happy to call her a guru. Visiting the teachers in this building, she spent time in front of all the specialists. The art teacher, the health and wellness teacher, the PE teacher, who will have this in place as well.
This can trickle down to, even elementary and up to high school.
And that's why both were at the table, absolutely.
I think there needs to be that connection. So if it's starting here, I think that's a great point.
And to Justin's point, Amy, and I forgot her last name, was with us during the site visit for that, and has actually gone back to the high school English department and taken pieces. You need to move it forward when you go into high school, but she got a lot out of that visit as well. So it was a K-12 look. So.
And the teachers are so thirsty for that. Teachers by very nature sometimes like to shut their door and just, really focus. Anytime we have an opportunity, for this building to visit down the elementary schools, their teachers applaud us, The teachers here applaud them. You know, when Amy came on that site visit, she said, we have to do this more. So, you know, to speak on behalf of the teachers, you know, they are very willing and ready for more collaboration, you know, vertical in that district.
Good evening, guys. I will admit first, this was a very difficult exercise for me because, as a lot of you may know, I do talk. I was limited to one slide, and my goal today is to be as short but concise as possible with the MCAS improvement plan.
I think I got 4% on my iPhone.
4%, okay, great. That could be probably, what, 35 minutes? Great. So I would like to start by recognizing the teachers in our building. I will say and admit that MCAS data isn't easy data to look at and to look for specific topics and concepts and skills really can be quite overwhelming. I will start with the open response questions because that's the second part of my slide, but I think you're seeing that there is a common slide of open responses. When Amy Keller went on the site visit, she was happy to say, Mike, we do something similar to this in the English department. It's not called what they call it at Bridgewater Raynham, but we do have something similar where it's a guided writing exercise, which emphasizes explanation and development of claims, support, and connections. The thing that she really got out of that is that we do it in our English department. It doesn't go down into our science or our math or our foreign language or our arts. And that is something that with that vertical alignment and discussions with middle school and elementary school teachers, which I completely welcome and want that to happen and want that to happen more than what we've been doing and get into different buildings and districts to see what they're doing. I think will only make us a better community of learners. But the focus of the open responses is to really get into the other departments because with our science and math, we did see a focus in on the open responses and what that looks like. I can say that with the open responses and having dialogue with our department heads, there were specific things that they felt students really struggled with. One was understanding what the question was asking. So what specifically were they asking? So they weren't completely aware what they needed to answer. And that is something that we felt we needed to incorporate more into our common assessments to have MCAS-style questions. Second part was just the persevering through a multi-step question that needed or required multiple answers. Some students just did not want to go through that process and persevere through what they thought was a difficult question, but in reality it was just a question with multiple answers that they didn't feel that they had skills to be able to do. And then the last part is just providing enough evidence to support their claims. So when I walk into the English department and look at how are they supporting claims with evidence and quotes, that is something that we need to do throughout our department. I will say that MCAS, there is a rubric for MCAS. When we score 1 through 4, that is part of the English department where they have the MCAS rubric. Students are assessing their own writing. They self-assess, they peer assess, and they actually are scoring their own open response questions through the MCAS rubric, which I think is really important and valued to understand the rubric or understand how you're actually being assessed. So I would just want to state that. Common assessments right now will be evaluated. So we're looking at our midterms, our finals, any unit exams, using a guided matrix. It's something called Hess's rigor relevance, and then we're looking at Bloom's taxonomy to increase rigor in the questions that we have. we are looking to prepare students for MCAS, but we also are looking at where PARC is going to be in the next couple of years. And I feel that PARC versus MCAS, that there's a little more in terms of the level and depth of thinking when we're looking at the analysis, the evaluation, and the creation of, versus just remembering and understanding. So those increasing opportunities of the high level thinking, I think, is really important. And the rigor relevance matrix and the Bloom's taxonomy came from a DBM training workshop that Dr. Thompson had a lot of us go to, and I thought, how can we really incorporate this into our common assessments? Open response is something that we've been working on. We've had something similar to what the middle school experienced on the site visit, but we did feel that this is something that we want to make simpler so that the students understand, and it's not just an English issue or a literacy issue, it's a school issue where we need to go look at our math and science and our electives and so forth and see that writing happening and seeing that rigor and that relevance in that piece. Second piece that we're looking at, I'm going back to our math. After the analysis with our MCAS data, the math department really wanted to focus in on one simple practice. They called it the MP1, which I didn't really know what that meant until Ethan Rose mentioned to me that it's the mathematical practice, which is part of the standard. But it quotes, it's stating that students need to make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. And I think that's a simple, clean, concise statement, and that is their goal. So we're looking at students, they can solve equations using one variable, but they were struggling with inequalities, which we're seeing more in the Common Core standards, and most recently in the MCAS. We are looking at ways of seeing problems and coming up with multiple solutions. Students, I see more in the advanced and honors level classes, they think there's only one solution to a problem, and they really struggle with the idea that there are multiple solutions to a problem. We assess truly on their thought process. How did they get to that piece? The other facts that, or the other specific topic or concept that they looked at was that students were really confused when their responses or answers weren't whole numbers. So the non-traditional 4.2, 1/8, 7/4, they thought they had that problem wrong because what we were giving to students, particularly the Algebra 1 and geometry, were traditional whole answers of 7. So when they got to the MCAS and they were coming up with numbers that weren't whole, that was something that really confused them. The last part, I think IXL is new to the high school. This is something that we got on. We heard about that in the elementary and middle school. So our department in the math department said we need this as well. We're hearing a lot of great things. So we're using that this year frequently in our classes. We do have some Chromebooks that are shared amongst our math department. We look at IXL to really review and reinforce the fundamentals. And it is a pretty neat concept where a student gets one topic or skill correct, and there's a rigor or a higher level question that they can get and move on with. If they're struggling with certain concepts or skills, the program or the software will maintain that level of question until they get that correct. But we are looking again at this rigor, relevance matrix, and Bloom's taxonomy, and having all of our teachers truly look at the common assessments to incorporate higher level thinking with application, analysis, evaluation, creation. That is our focus that we feel is really important to really prepare our students for higher level skills and jobs and opportunities that they have. So that's still on, so I think that's a time. But there is a common theme, and I'm glad to see that we have a common theme throughout our districts. Literacy initiative is definitely a big one. But for us as well, is looking at that multiple step process of how do we increase higher level thinking and learning from a common assessment that traditionally I took an exam where it was straight recall and memorization. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what I wrote 2 hours later because I cringed for that exam. I didn't learn anything. I got the A, but I didn't learn anything, I'll be honest. So looking at the application synthesis, I think is going to be our next step to, again, move our students in that direction that we want them to be in. I'll stop.
Anything else, Tim? Oh, I have plenty. Go ahead. Just real quick, I have to say, and I mentioned a little bit earlier, but this is our first run at it. The staff and our principals here really exceeded my expectations. You'll notice, and people will say, "Oh, the MCATs don't count." They do count. It's kind of our gold standard of whether kids are on track to be college and career ready, and the economy of the future is going to be very different than the economy of the past, and we need to come to grips with that. We're talking about important skills, and what really blew me away is they didn't focus in on just the content here. These plans talk about important skills that go across subject areas. They talk about close reading, critical thinking, dissecting problems, numeracy, mathematical reasoning. And these are skills that our students need to have. The MCAS does an okay job of measuring that. The PARCC test, when it comes, we'll do a much better job of measuring that. But these are the skills we need to make sure our kids are on track. And not that I want kids losing sleep overnight before they take these tests. We need to come in, take them seriously, give us good information so that we can make sure we're preparing them for the future. Just so you know, this is a process. It's not a one and done. I'm going to ask the staff and the principals to go back and revisit these plans mid-year. Our mid-year is a little skewed because we started a little bit late this year, but probably after the vacation, come back, kind of do a progress report, a recheck on where their kids are, where they are with implementing these plans, so that we can finish them out. And then next year, we'll do it all over again. But it is an important exercise. I think it really was a very good exercise in looking at data, and MCAS data is our gold standard, and I'm very impressed with it so far. Great.
Any other comments?
Questions? So you're talking terminology that I think teachers and staff understand. Are you trying to encourage students to understand? When you say things like we're using Bloom's taxonomy, or we're teaching metacognition, or we're doing that, the students get a process maybe, and maybe they're having those discussions in the room, but they don't get the terminology, and so sometimes when they see it back, it's like, what do you mean inference? What do you mean critical thinking? We throw them around like they're the alphabet. But to students, they're not. So I think not just teaching processes, but teaching them I mean, if I went to a typical high school student and said, explain to me Bloom's taxonomy, could they do it?
Honestly, I'd say 50% could. Probably never heard. Yeah.
And I guess what I'm saying is I think it's important to do both. I think it's important for them to understand, not to be able to say, well, Bloom's, I just pulled that one up because it's on your list, but not to be able to say what that is. But if you're taking me through the process of open response, and you're starting through the Bloom's taxonomy, and you're having me, understand something and unpack a problem and do these things, I think it's helpful for students to understand why they're doing that, and why it works to do it in a certain order, and why it works to learn these metacognition skills and what those skills are, because they see them later, and I'm only saying this because I then work with the college students who are seeing this, and they're going, and I said, you've been doing it for years. So it goes from the elementary to the middle to the high school to the college, and it's teaching them a foreign language. Mm-hmm. And so I think we've got to bring the pieces in.
Yeah, I think it is very obviously grade level and age specific. But I mean, it's about unpacking what the question is asking, not necessarily what the terminology is. When they're taking psych as a junior or a senior, then they can get into those, get into those words. But it is about unpacking the question, realizing what those key vocabularies and words are, and what it's asking you to show and do.
And I think it doesn't matter what grade level you look at. We've always taught the what, and now it's the how and the why.
Correct.
So it's the how and the why, whether you're a kindergartner or you're a high school person. If you change those whats to how and why, that's when they're going to have ownership. So I think having them understand it's the
Because
how
I
and
say
why.
every day, you need to unpack this problem. And we have terminology for what unpack means, and all that
Just
stuff.
kind of respond, Jane, I think our goal is that the instructional practices is what's being changed, and it's those questions of, let's go to the board, and it's not just find the area of a circle and be able to repeat that, using different numbers. It's instructional practice that we see when you walk in. What are the questions that teachers are asking, and how are we pushing and pulling things from students so that their thought process is being extended? Do I want them to know Bloom's taxonomy? I want them to be able to live it out. And
But I want them to know why you're asking them to do it that way. I want them to know the why, I guess.
Also, what I heard from the elementary is a shift in the student role. I heard literary discussions are happening down there where the teacher is the facilitator, and the teacher and the students are asking questions of each other, and if those students are asking other students or their peers to infer something down there, that is so powerful for our level, because then they understand the language of Bloom's. They might not know Benjamin Bloom 1956, but they know evaluate, they know infer, and that's the biggest piece.
And that's what I was trying to get. Do they know? I mean, you're saying they infer this, but they know what that means.
It's a literary, absolutely. It's the students taking on the role and, empowering. So when they see it in writing, they've experienced it.
It's about the engagement. It's not about the compliance. I think sometimes we confuse that. So it's about not just doing a math problem and answering the questions more in depth.
It does require a whole different shift. And with that shift comes anxiety. I mean, even as a parent, is it easier to go and get your child's shoes or to say, how are you going to solve that problem? I mean, realistically, you can do it at home and you can do it here, but it's the how and the why. The shift of changing the question is a big one. It's a big one, but it's a start, so it's great.
Yeah, and I like the way the discussion is going. It's interesting to see. I know we've been handicapped for a long time. We didn't have assistant superintendent for a long time. We didn't have curriculum directors, and we cut your legs off every year with the budget, year after year after year. And I realize that, and I think we're seeing the impact of that. But it's good to see discussions like I mentioned to Bill. I said there's a difference between programs and curriculum. It's very easy just to say, "What's your curriculum?" Everyday math. No, it's not. It's good to see you're focusing on curriculum, and I know you're starting now to be unpacking standards, and assessment is not just hanging a score on a kid at the end. You're an 85. No, that's formative assessment. Okay, what do you get? What do you need in terms of instruction, phonemic awareness, and things like that? That's what the assessment is. You're an 85, you're a B+, or you're whatever. That's not what it's about. It's about unpacking standards and reacting to what you see, whether it's how a child is reading orally, how he's inferring, how he does an MCAS test. How do you react to that? How is he progressing in RTI? Things like that. But again, I think in the past it used to be, what was your curriculum? And they would name the program you're using. And that's not it. That really isn't. So it's good to see some motion in that direction now. So I think then that's reflected in your PD. So this is why I think, I hinted at it earlier, but I'd like to see sort of a framework for the PD for the year, because that's really driving where you're going. I know some districts, it's, oh my gosh, your PD next week, what the heck are we going to do? Let's throw something. Yeah. So it's, more of a global, 30,000 foot approach, not just, oh my God, how can we fill next week for the math teachers? But again, I think it starts with unpacking, and we're definitely headed in the right direction. So it's good to see. We're getting the train moving, I think.
I guess my question would be, how do you, the four of you feel about moving forward? I mean, do you see us moving in a direction that has been different? I mean, I'd like to hear what how you feel. I mean, because you're four here, you're sitting here in front of us. We want to know, do you see this heading in a direction that is exciting and,
You know what struck me most tonight was, we had a copy of the place, so to hear the discussion, there are so many commonalities all the way up. I mean, we're talking about open response, and it's so valuable to know what's going on in the middle school, what they need to be working on, what they're seeing, the high school, because it starts here. It starts with us, and that has struck me. I think it's very exciting. You can tell that we're having these opportunities to get together and my gosh, this year's the first year that we've really had that much interaction between Millville and the complex.
And amongst all of us. I mean, I'm finding this very healthy. I mean, when people are checking out how's it going this year, and the first word that pops in my mind is refreshing. Finally, we're all working together in that direction, getting that vision. It's busy, I'm not going to lie to you, it's busy, and staff are giving us that feedback of how much, we're doing all of this. Yet there's this, I think once the dust settles, there's going to be that energy, because when I'm talking with individuals, there's that healthy discussion about what else can I do? I'm going to take this and revamp everything. And I liked our discussion because with the trends we're seeing where we all need to work on, and it's all in the same track. So that's interesting, and I think in a way, because you're saying some of the same things that we were saying at elementary and middle school. So in a way, that will guide our PD, because I think we just identified it for where we're heading now.
And the big difference is in that chair that has somebody focused on curriculum. It's something that this district has been lacking. I've been here 5 years, and I will use what you use. It's refreshing. And we can never go back to being a district where the superintendent is doing it all. Because it did not work. It was not working for 4 years.
And the one question that Wade asked earlier is, how do you make your budget needs-based, not dollar-based, which is great. So it's a start. But it's brutal to listen to you, spin these plans, all these great ideas, and get all excited. I signed a lot of, principal interview. I think on half of you when you were hired. I'm getting very excited. I can't wait to tell this guy. He's really great. He's really great. Got the good ideas. Get it done with, 20% less money. It just kills you. So that's what I'm glad to see. Your budget is based on needs. It's not on dollars. I mean, they'll, be addressed at a later date, but it's good to see.
I don't remember Mike in the interview saying that he forgot the answer for 2 hours before that.
I'm opening up to you guys. I want to hear some honesty from you right now. I'm just going to answer that question. I think, there's been so much on our plate in terms of, what is our clear focus? Are we looking at technology? Are we looking at, a lot of different initiatives? And we've always, the four of us have always looked at each other and said, curriculum instruction is a driving force. We were here 3 years ago talking about rigor and relevance, in that MCAS and that budget. And that, I think, is our number one priority. It has to be. And when we go into an evaluation and we look at the rubric, standards 1 and 2, curriculum, instruction, assessments. Everything else is important, but a priority when I walk into a classroom, when I walk into a district, I want to talk about curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And that, to me, is our focus. We get there, we're a stronger community, we're excited about what we're doing, kids are moving in the right direction, And it gives us that added excitement that we've been looking for. So, I mean, I appreciate the dialogue today, and this has been great. So, and I will be looking for some open, honest opinions of you in high school and what you experienced through that. Sorry, so
You'll get there. Okay, all right, so I mean, it's great momentum at this point, so let's just keep moving forward. So thank you guys, well done on all of this. Okay, you good, Dave?
I'm good, you good?
Good. Public forum, seeing nobody. School committee forum.
Merry Christmas.
I have some. I would like to thank and recognize the Millville Policemen's Association for their contribution over the years to the Toys for Tots drive up at Millville Elementary School. They've donated $7,000. The program started in 2001, and between the Policemen's Association and the community contributing, they contributed over $4,000 towards that time. All goes to the kids that are going for Toys for Tots programs. Yeah. So
Congratulations.
Merry Christmas. And to anybody I offended, Happy Holidays.
I didn't say that. I just offended a little.
Happy Holidays.
I would like to recognize Mr. Nicolini at the high school for the wonderful play he put on a couple weeks ago. He's really brought that drama program to a level we haven't seen for a while. And the hours that he must put in, I can only imagine, to do a production like that and to take the kids who really took quite a leadership role in the production, and just great to see a different facet. You know, we hear a lot about sports, and nothing wrong with sports, but it's a different facet that kids who maybe don't participate in sports or band or something like that have another outlet. And so it's good to see we have a new, exciting, growing program in the high school. And happy holidays.
The Regional Agreement Committee sent out a survey yesterday, 2 days ago, for students and faculty at the middle school. It consisted of only about 5 questions, very basic questions, based on the feedback that we received from the parents groups and the teachers, and we received 20 responses, so we'll be compiling those towards the end of December and sharing those you know, in January during our budget conversations, because I think some of the concerns can definitely be addressed, even though they were shared at the committee. I think they can definitely be addressed looking at the budget as well. So we'll be compiling those, and that'll be ready to you hopefully by January, beginning of January. And the survey is also being taken by students. So we will hear students, teachers of the middle school, we've heard from teachers at the elementary school, so we're getting there. And we will share that.
It was a focus on how they transition.
How they transition, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and actually, I have to thank Justin because he has been helping me frame questions. I've actually talked to Mrs. Desai, Mrs. Brown, you know, just to make sure that they're on board with the same type of questions. So, I appreciate their feedback, and he's been very open to sharing the idea and getting it out. Like I said, a lot of the teachers just took it, and the hope is that the students will be taking it shortly.
That's great.
Merry Christmas.
I also went to the Footloose. It was a great show, and I went to the middle school band performance the other night, which they did a great job. And I look forward to budget season, but I look forward to getting into the nitty-gritty over the next couple of months of how we move forward and keep the momentum that we heard tonight, and match that with dollars, because that's it's a must. So I also wish everyone a happy holiday, and our next meeting is January 8th. Do we have a question of where we want that to be. Preference where we want that to be. Will the library be done?
Yes.
Wherever's.
Probably go anywhere.
I'm open to whatever. We can go back to the library.
We keep teasing though, Will, and we have not got there.
Every time there's something going on in that auditorium.
I thought we were going to the library. It would have to be the auditorium.
Well, I think this is live, and that's being the auditorium. I'll go anywhere. I don't. Yeah. Like French.
Say we stick to the library.
Yeah, don't attack. All right, so next time we'll go to the library, and then we'll plan on those committee meetings in January.
I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
Maybe when we do the budget, we can
Bebop on a little bit. Okay, now I'm looking for an adjournment, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
This is good.